Hi, my name is Elder Luchetta Manis, and I'm going to have some serious discussions about some things today that I think are very, very important when it comes to the state of our community and where the church is at or the kingdom is at. Um, as a minister of the gospel, you come across people from all walks of life, all religious backgrounds, social status, um, creeds, sexual orientation, all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I want to get the church and people to understand is that we need more of a dialogue between community and church to help solve some of the problems that are plaguing our streets with our youth, including violence and a lot of other things. Um, with that being said, it is in my opinion, that a lot of what we're seeing is the breakdown of the family. When you have the breakdown of the family, it also leads to other things. It leads to people being more vulnerable as individuals to different elements of society, and it snowballs into creating chaos, confusion, and violence and things like that. When I mean the breakdown of the family, I'm not just talking about the parental mother and father being split up or something like that. I'm talking about other things that go on in families, generational curses, to be exact. And when talking about generational curses, um, I'm talking about abuse, neglect, um, mainly abuse and neglect. Um, Me personally, being somebody who survived um, abuse from a young age, I can say that for most of my life, it has caused me to have to deal with an array of things that a normal person probably wouldn't have to deal with. Um, just as an example, statistic wise, they say a person who has experienced some sort of abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, verbal, um, and yes, verbal abuse is like not talked about as much, but it is abuse, and it is equally harmful as hitting someone. But some of the problems that come with people being abused is they don't excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. They don't get to grow up and meet every milestone without dealing with baggage from that abuse. And depending how long you have been abused will determine how long it will take you to live. A lot of people are in the depression that people who are abused can go get help, and then like magic they'll be normal. um, that unfortunately doesn't happen. You can go get help. Will you be ever completely normal? I don't think so, but you're operating. You're an operating person. Um, I like to consider myself an operating person because there are still some things behind closed doors that I deal with as an effect of the abuse that I had when I was younger. Um, So, um, I want to say that your life is not over, whether you were an abuser or a person who was abused, that God has the power to change everything. The problem with me saying that is, although I believe God has the power to change every and anything, and prayer does work. Trust me, it does. I've had communication with God my entire life, but with prayer is also education and understanding about how abuse affects everybody and how people um, internalize it and how it affects us as a community. Because when you have the breakdown of a family, um, with abuse being done to an individual, it causes things to spill out, and what happens in a home becomes a community problem. And just to give you an idea, statistically, um, people of abuse have these following problems. Um, they don't have to have them all. They might struggle with some. They might not struggle with any that you could probably see, but for the most part, these are some of the symptoms that they deal with. Um, some people deal with criminal activity because, believe it or not, with abuse, you don't have a recollection of a boundary of what's right and wrong, because by the way, what happened to you was wrong, but because it was a wrong and it was done to you, probably by a parent of authority, probably by somebody else of authority. Um, Society looks at parents as being um, the authority and being the overseers, and so it causes a rebellion to authority. So that's where criminal activity comes in when people are abused. Um, you tend to have damaging relationships as an adult. I can say many of my romantic relationships as an adult have been affected by abuse very badly. I've been married and divorced twice. I can say my needs for a relationship are different than most. There sometimes you have to deal with triggers, and if you don't know what triggers is, something will set you off about you being abused that will cause you to have flashbacks and go into the mind state of how you felt when that abuse happened. So if you have somebody who's not strong enough to deal with that, or somebody who doesn't have an understanding of that, then it causes damage to relationships. It also causes damages not only to romantic relationships, but platonic relationships, because with that being said, unless you know what it's like, you really can't begin to understand. You have problems in school because you're not concentrating. School's the last thing on your agenda when you're being abused. Self-destruction and suicide, I've dealt with that. Wanting to end the pain, wanting to get out of the situation, but don't know how. Don't know how to tell people what's going on. So um, you tend to think of ways that you can get out of it. And one of the ways out of it is contemplating suicide. I can tell you that I have contemplated suicide when I was a teenager and in the middle school. And yeah, it wasn't, it's a bad mind state to be in. Um, a lot of people have low self esteem and depression. And I suffered with low self esteem and depression and anxiety. So, even as a child, with me not being diagnosed at that time, because of course I wasn't, during abuse, I wasn't taken to a doctor to sit down with a shrink and be like, okay, well, why are you feeling this way? But now that I'm an adult, I recognize that even then that I had anxiety. Um, I had anxiety, I had depression, low self esteem. I dealt with those things as I was growing up. Low self esteem, I thought very low of myself and thought I didn't deserve anything good in my life, no matter what it was, because, you know, after all, I was abused, and that must make me bad, which makes anything that comes towards me something that I deserved. Um, Depression, it's hard when you're trying to get yourself out of that state of misery, because your mind just goes in circles. It's like a continuous circle of why can't, what am I gonna do? Why can't, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And you tend to withdraw from people, and anxiety, the anxiousness of, okay, you don't even have the ability to live because you're afraid something's going to go wrong. You get anxious, you get scared, you have a fear of good, you have a fear of bad, you have a fear of everything, because after all, um, before you were abused, you didn't see the abuse coming. And then when you get abused, you're like, wow, if this happens to me, if this happens to me and out of nowhere, what else can happen out of nowhere? That's the mentality of somebody who's been abused. Um, Re-victimization. A lot of people who have been abused end up being abusers themselves. I can say for me, thank God, I haven't inflicted abuse on other people. I can say I've come close. I can say I've I've thought about it. I'm not gonna lie. Let's just keep it real. But I just didn't because I had a barrier or a cutoff to where I just didn't allow myself to cross a certain line. And my faith in God also was the driving force of me not wanting to hurt somebody the way they've hurt me. Can I say that was easy? No, it wasn't. It was not easy for me not to hurt somebody else because that's all that I understood. That's all that I knew. Um, Eating disorders happen. I never had a problem with that. Sexual dysfunction or promiscuity. I can tell you that being a victim of abuse will cause you to be um, promiscuous. That I was, because you're looking for the love and affection from somebody to solve all your problems, and you feel like if you give them this in exchange, they'll give you love, acceptance, affection, and help your self-esteem out, but it really doesn't. Um, it just spirals into something that becomes worse because a lot of times you're rejected by those people. You have phobias. Um, I had a phobia about being alone, believe it or not. Whenever I thought about being alone, it made me hyperventilate. You have strange phobias, maybe like I did not like people hugging me. Believe it or not, I love my daughter from my very soul, but it was so hard for me to hug my daughter because I had phobias. I didn't want to hurt her. And I felt like if I was overly affectionate, that maybe I would hurt her in some kind of a way. Mentally, that's not a mental connection for the logical person, but for somebody who's been abused, that makes sense. So I could say I proudly hug my daughter now and show my daughter affection, but it wasn't an easy thing. It was a phobia. Sleep patterns, I can tell you people who've been abused do have problems with sleeping. You have tons of nightmares um, of things that occur, things that you think that probably could occur. Back to the phobia, sometimes you experience in your nightmares, you get night terrors. I can't tell you how many times I woke up crying, even as an adult. So I mean, it interrupts your sleep, and it really affects you as an individual when you're trying to be an individual in society. Um, Substance abuse. I didn't take drugs, but alcohol was my thing, which is still considered a drug, but not an illegal drug. But alcohol was my thing, and I did at some point become an alcoholic because it was easier to drink away all my problems and all my feelings and the things that I felt like I couldn't deal with, to drink them away in a bottle. Sometimes depending on what type of abuse you have, sometimes it's permanent, things that cause disability, things that cause scarring. Um, that I'm fortunate that never happened to me. With all that being said, um, we have people that are coming to our churches with these problems, and if we are ill-equipped to deal with them, you're going to have a bunch of broken people coming to church, praising God, going back home broken. Um, Going back home to their broken situations, to their broken environments, and never making changes. The whole point of going to church is to make a change. The whole point into getting whole is to break a cycle. Now, I can say that with my kids, I'm talking about my kids, that I chose to break a cycle. It wasn't easy, but I can honestly say that I could not just get that from just simply going to church and somebody laying their hands on me. You have to understand, people who come from abusive situations are real people with real problems, with real traumas that have to be addressed, have to be understood, and have to be taken care of, and have the right resources to help them. With that being said, the church way back when, um, was a source of resource for a lot of people. The church didn't just deal with your spiritual side of you, because we are people that live in a body, we possess a soul, and we are spirits. The church didn't just deal with our spirits, they dealt with the things that we had to deal with on a normal basis back in the day. The churches dealt with hunger. If you were in poverty and needed food, you went to the church. The church was the first place to go besides the government, because you got to understand something. There wasn't this big relationship between government and the people back then, especially if you were African American, Black, whatever term you want to use. The church was a source of resource. The church was our religious organizations, our Black organizations. Not just saying for Black people, but for the most part, I'm just speaking about how the relationship between church and community was. Um, we as the kingdom have to have a better mindset about how we help our congregation. It's not just good enough for them to come every day and stand in the prayer line, every day to get their hands laid on, every day to get a prophecy. I mean, those are wonderful, but we need to teach people how to break cycles, how to get the mental help that they need, how to get the resources that they need. This even means sometimes having to work with other churches that you probably don't have to really want to work with. This may be um, um, having more talks about mental health from a scientific and a health point of view. We as people have to get in kingdom of God, have to get more in the mind frame of, okay, we have to start having a dialogue to say that it's okay to say that there's something wrong with you, to say there's something wrong with your environment. Okay, and let's see how we can fix this. um, we as the kingdom need to learn how to utilize our resources. There are lots and lots of programs out there that can help people, and Black people especially need to get out of that rut to think that we don't need counseling. We need counseling sometimes with certain situations, and no, it's not bad, and no, it's not of the devil. Get out of that mindset. Counseling is another resource that can help somebody get from point A to point B. Now, I'm not saying counseling is the end all. I'm not saying church is the end all. I'm saying combine with the two, that it can really change lives, but we have to be willing to open our minds to accept the fact that no one place has all the answers. But collectively, we do our part to help somebody ensure that they're taken care of holistically, mind, body, and soul. That we won't keep having people come to church broken and coming home to broken places, that have violence, that has abuse, that has mental issues that we just never deal with. When we keep passing them down to our kids, but yet going to church every Sunday. We need to be stronger and to understand there's nothing weak about admitting that we need to talk about these things, that we need to have to solve problems for these things, because these are the things that are plaguing our community with negative um, reactions. Like, where do you think all the violence is coming from? Not everybody can say that they come from a good home, and I understand that. But there are certain traits and certain things that cause people to do what they do, and people are just not simply crazy all the time. You have to trace back almost generations of things that have been acceptable and instilled in people, and understand that unless the cycle is broken, we're going to see a lot more violence. We're going to see a lot more people with mental disorders. We're going to see a lot more people not being taken care of. We're going to see the health of people go down. Do you know obesity is up? Do you know childhood diabetes is more prominent now than it ever was? I mean, you have to look at all these statistics and not turn a blind eye to it. And the church, stop it. I plead with you, stop downing other methods of of healing, because it's simply not limited to prayer and God. Even though we pray and we believe for healing and believe for wholeness, God has also made doctors, psychiatrists, nurses. Um, God made these people with their gifts and talents to be able to help others. Science is not ungodly. We don't worship science, but science is not ungodly. And we need to get out that mindset of okay, well, God is all you need. Yes, I'm not disagreeing with God is all you need, but God also gave us the minds and the ability, because we are created in his image according to his likeness. We are creators, we're authoritarians, because we inherited that from our father. So what makes you think that God didn't give us the ability to be able to solve some problems too? We have to think about this. We have to have more of a dialogue. We have to stop the shame of people getting help. Stop shaming people for reaching out and help them. And if it's another resource other than just praying, yes, they should be told about it. They should be helped. So basically, that's all I wanted to say. But I just give this stuff some thought. Give it some thought because it's really important. I think that we start talking about some real stuff and getting some real problems solved, and stop having people come to church broken and bruised and going home broken and bruised, because you know what? Time out for that. Time out. We want to make it to heaven whole. We want to make it to heaven as warriors for God. We want to make it to heaven whole, you know. And the only way that we're going to get that is if we're honest with ourselves and we do the necessary things that we need to do to solve problems. So until next time, see ya. And just like I said, just think about it. Think about it.